Welcome to Hillview Cottage Music Studio. My name is Geoffrey Bell. I'm an associate composer of the Canadian Music Centre and an emeritus member of the Canadian League of Composers. Welcome to the Modern Composer Toolbox series. Today's session focuses on digitized and synthesized instruments that allow you to hear your music as you compose and to create demonstration recordings before your music is ever performed by humans. I live and work in the area of southern Alberta known as Treaty 7, which is the traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani First Nations, Stoney Nakoda, Chiniki Bearspaw, and Good Stoney First Nations, and the Tsuut'ina First Nations, as well as the Métis Nation of Alberta. They are my neighbors. Bonjour à mes collègues francophones. Je parle un peu de français, mais mon vocabulaire est limité. Merci d'avoir participé aujourd'hui. And just as disclaimers, I don't work for any of the software manufacturers mentioned in this presentation. My comments are based on my own discoveries and learning over many years. Composers compose all sorts of music, come from all sorts of background, and so participants today will know some of the content that I present, but it's my hope that you'll come away with 3 new things to think about or to try for yourself. It's worth noting that computer software and hardware evolve constantly, so no matter where I stick a pin in it, something is going to change next week. I'd say start by exploring things that your computer can handle currently and explore new possibilities in the future. And final note, I'm not an expert using any of the software that I'm introducing today. Every time I use the programs, I learn something new. Yep. Here's a quick look at where I am right now in Hillview Cottage Music Studio. And you can see that really all I've got is a MIDI keyboard, a synthesizer, a little laptop, and a big screen so that I can see more detail. So today's topics: why use these new tools, what hardware is useful, what mixing things can I do in my DAW, plugins, what features am I looking for when I choose the software, how good can it sound. We're going to look at 5 different sources of digitized instruments and synthesized instruments today. It'll be just a quick overview, but it should give you an idea of some things that you may be able to explore to your own benefit. A little bit about mixing, adding effects to the final mix. Then there'll be a summary and questions. The presentation is an hour long, so I'll go at quite a clip through it, but I'm happy to stay for questions at the end. So, 4 reasons that you might want to use new tools. Live performances. If you play on stage or right beside the stage in a pit orchestra, this gives you the ability to have new sounds that aren't available with traditional instruments. In traditional composition, it gives you the ability to hear fairly realistic versions of your work as you compose and edit. If you're creating demonstration or guide audio tracks to send to performers or publishers, this is a wonderful way to present your work and, of course, post them on social media until a real recording with real musicians is available. And, of course, if you're working in the area of soundtracks, you can create short clips to sell to stock libraries and budget-friendly soundtracks for lower budget film and video productions. Basics: a simple MIDI keyboard. I highly recommend getting one with weighted touch-sensitive keys. It will give you much more expressiveness when you're using it to write your music. A connector to connect the MIDI keyboard to the computer, and of course, a connection to the internet. And it's worth noting again, before you go and spend a couple of $100s on a new piece of software, make sure your computer meets the system requirements. I have made that mistake in the past. We all use different music recording and editing software, also called a DAW. I will be using GarageBand today. It comes free on every Mac. And if you get to the point where you want to upgrade to a more professional DAW, of course, the next step up from GarageBand is Apple Logic Pro, often called Logic. And if you're working in the Windows world, there's a program called Reaper that is an inexpensive choice that works on both Mac and Windows. It's about $60 US, so roughly 100 Canadian. And of course, you can get into spending thousands of dollars on the professional tools. But if you're just exploring, I always start with the budget-friendly option. Now, within the DAW, there are things called plugins. In the Mac world, they're called audio units or AUs. In the Windows world, they're called VSTs. Macs can do both, actually. And you can see here a little screenshot from within GarageBand. Anything that is colored in blue is turned on at the moment. Anything that's grayed out is just off right now. But whatever DAW you use, just look for the word plugins and click to explore. We're going to play with some plugins today. So when I'm shopping for new software, number one choice, budget friendly. Yes, the professionals will spend $1,000 or $2,000 on a fabulous instrument library, but you don't need to do that to start with. I'm looking for solo instruments and string sections and brass sections and a wide variety of percussion instruments, realistic sounds. It would be great if there were mic position choices so you can have the microphones right there in with the instruments, or you can have them 10 meters back so you get more of the audience sound. You can have them placed all over the place. The fancier programs give you lots of mic position choices. In the basic or free versions, that's probably one of the options they'll drop out. Please give me control of reverb and echo. Key switches for standard performing techniques, different articulations for each instrument. It should be compatible with all the popular DAWs, and it should also have a standalone player so that if I am a stage musician or a pit musician, I can play live. And of course, can my favorite music type setting software use the instruments directly for playback so that I can hear it right away? So just how good can my music sound with digitized instruments? This sample was written not by me. Kuni Murai, One Pure White Dove. And it's written for choir and orchestra. And you'll never get to hear the choir. I'm only going to play the first minute, which is just orchestra. And this was done using the Berlin Philharmonic software. Their trumpet section. String section. So for free software, that comes with the computer. That's quite remarkable that you've got those sounds available to you. And you can see that I've clicked the word orchestral and then brass to get to this section, but each thing that you click on shows you a large selection of instruments. So here's a little excerpt from a piece of mine called The Lake Isle of Innisfree, and it will give you an idea of what ensemble music can sound like with a vocalist.
I will arise and go now and coulter in the spring, and the small cabin built there of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a heart for the honeybee, and live alone in the beloved glade.
So that was done using Apple instruments in GarageBand. It doesn't give you control over the instruments, and there's a limited selection of instruments, so it's not giving you the full range of choices that expensive software will give you. So here's still within GarageBand, but switching to the synthesized loops and instruments if you write this sort of music. It's called Big Drop Beat Disco Delight. Fun making that one, and that's just using the loops that come built in. All right, let's move on. Quick live demonstration. Starting up GarageBand. If it's your first time using it, it'll offer you a choice of where to get started. This is a piece that we're going to be looking at a little bit later on. But the opening screen asks you to choose over here whether you want to start a new project, work on something recent, use a template, and if you want to see the complete list of all your projects, you would go down here to open an existing project. But for a new project, I just select that, and then it gives us 4 choices. And don't worry about which one you start with, because all of these things are available to you once you get in there. So if you want to start with a drum track, it comes with built-in drummers, and you just click on that and it gives you a choice of drummers and drum beats, and you can adjust the rhythms and the intensity and all sorts of things. If you want to plug in your electric guitar or bass to your Mac and record using their virtual amplifiers and pedal effects, they have all of those things built in as well. I've got a puppy beside me who's not very happy, so if you hear funny little noises, that's Ellie. If you are going to use live musicians, You can plug in your microphone or line input, or if you have recordings, audio files, you can drag them and drop them in. And last of all, if you want to use some of the software instruments that are available, you just click Software Instrument and then Create. So we'll just have a very, very quick look at that. It starts off with a library of the sounds that are built in over here. You can see a thin blue line around the edge, and that's what we're working on. You can open and close the library just by clicking this little button. I think my little friend here may have to leave. It starts with classic electric piano just as a default, and if you have a MIDI keyboard plugged in, good. So that's how you get to all of your instrument sounds. If you want a mallet instrument, say a marimba, you just choose marimba. It's that simple. Controls are underneath for each instrument that you select. But if you want to get into VSTs, audio units, plugins, you need to come down below the instrument panel to where it says plugins. And you're controlling whichever track you've clicked on. So if you've got 5 tracks and you click on this track, you are only controlling that track. And when you go to plugins, it's using the sampler right now, but right beside it I've got some little arrows, and this is where you get to your BBC Symphony Orchestra or your sign player for Berlin Strings or KONTAKT. And so we'll do all of that next. Right now we're going to leave GarageBand and I won't save. KONTAKT Factory Library. Now it comes with an excellent selection of orchestral instruments, solo and sectional. Also has a great selection of other instruments and sounds, and more sounds can be purchased and imported. So here's a little sample of Alone Together, written during COVID when we were all feeling pretty isolated as we sheltered in place. And this has a combination of digitized, synthesized, and sounds from nature, including, you'll hear a loon in there and some wind chimes. This is using KONTAKT instruments. It's worth noting that those are not real humans singing, that's software. If you missed my last presentation 2 weeks ago, it's now available on the CMC's brand new YouTube channel, and there's a link to that, so that you can learn more about the digitized vocal sounds. So, the KONTAKT Factory Library also has an excellent selection of percussion instruments, and it's got synthesized instruments, all sorts of things. When I wrote this next piece of music from Mr. Torrance, I started off writing it in Finale, and the instrument set that comes with Finale is called Garritan Orchestra. And once I was done recording it, I was really happy to have a great orchestral sound, but it sounded kind of flat. It didn't have enough depth and dimension to it. So I combined that, the WAV file that I recorded from Finale, took it into my DAW, and dragged the MIDI file in using KONTAKT instruments as well. So here is the result of combining 2 orchestras together. and I'm really happy with that. Synthesized instruments. Lots of libraries of extra instruments are available, but the KONTAKT factory library comes built in when you buy KONTAKT. I think is around $300 Canadian, although I saw it on sale this past week for $259 or something like that. And then there are other instrument libraries that you can add on. So here's one of their synthesized instruments that you wouldn't be able to have a live performer play because the instrument doesn't exist in the real world. So if I was writing the score for some sort of strange sci-fi, environmentally weird film, that might be a fun sound. If you're looking for something epic, cinematic in the percussion world, I would go to the Albion sounds and try out Easter Island. Sounds like this. That'll certainly get people's attention. All right. Whoops. Okay, here are two excerpts from In Color using KONTAKT instruments.
I used to see things in black and white. My parents taught me what was wrong and right. Areas of great field with uncertainty, uncomfortable truths swept aside, cast into the sea.
Okay, and in the interests of time, we'll move along. Again, not real singers, not real instruments, all software. So, let's have a look at how to use the KONTAKT software on your computer. And you've got two choices. If you're doing live performances and you've got your MIDI keyboard plugged in, you'd probably open the standalone KONTAKT player. And if you're recording within your DAW, you'd open your DAW first and then load the KONTAKT instruments. The instruments look and behave exactly the same. So let's have a look. We're going to pop into GarageBand for a minute. So let's start a new project. Let's use software instruments. Let's close the Apple library. And instead of classic electric piano, let's go down to plugins and choose, instead of ePiano, go down to KONTAKT Stereo. And there is the panel that you can make your choices. It's still called classic electric piano at the top until we rename it. But let's say, for instance, that we wanted to look at the libraries. We would click the Libraries tab, and then underneath there are lots and lots of libraries that I've installed, and the instruments are just below, and you click on Instruments to see the list of what comes in that particular package. We're going to try the Xylo polyphones, and what we need to do is drag that file and drop it in this window. It comes with a keyboard on screen that you can press some buttons, press some keys with your mouse, but if you've got your MIDI keyboard plugged in and connected, you can do fun things like that. Each time you load something in, there is room underneath to load more, so you can combine 2 or 3 or 4 sounds from different places and play them all at the same time. If you want to close a sound that you have loaded, just click the little X here. But just before I do that, each instrument that you load comes with a unique control panel that's specific to that instrument, and it shows you what choices are available within that instrument. But if you want more control, click on the little wrench, and then the little wrench will show you an even more detailed set of controls. So this is how you use the instrument within GarageBand. Now you might think, well, is GarageBand using this sound right now? Yes, if I hit the record button and started playing, it would record that. But if I want to make a note of what I've done, I would go and change the name from classic electric piano to whatever it's called. And I always like to make a note of where it came from, just so that I can remember. And then the name will change up here as well. All right, let's leave GarageBand. I won't save that. Here's a link to the Native Instruments website so you can read more about KONTAKT if you're interested. All of this slideshow has been saved as a PDF, and it's on my website under my software notes, and you're welcome to make a copy for yourself. Let's move on to the BBC Symphony Orchestra. The BBC Symphony Orchestra has a screen that's laid out like an orchestra, so you can either select which instruments you're working on by clicking on the section, or there's also a pull-down menu at the top. It took me a while to figure out that you're just listening to the sounds as you're clicking around or going through the pull-down menu, but you're not actually loading the sound into your DAW until you click the little star beside it and click the load button. Took me a while to figure that out. It's got a slider for volume and another one for dynamic level. It's got reverb settings from almost nothing to a very large echoey hall. And each instrument comes with its own articulations, so we'll try that in just a moment. Let's do that now. And as I said, I'm using GarageBand as my DAW for each of these demonstrations, just so that you can see and hear with a consistent DAW any differences. So I'm going to close my Apple library, and I'm going to change my classic electric piano, but this time in plugins I'm going to go to BBC Symphony. This player that I'm using right now is free. So it always starts you off on the strings, violins, and this is what they sound like. Can you hear that? If you want pizzicato, and if you want a little bit of drama, so that gives you an idea of how easy it is to use. Right now, violins 1 has a star beside it. If I wanted to switch to brass, I have to go ahead and click the horns and the trumpets and the tenor trombones and all of those things. But be aware that I didn't turn the star off beside the strings. I didn't hit the clear button, so those are still in there. So I'm going to hit load, and here's my little keyboard. Let's see what happens. And I'd be happy to use that in any recording. All right, we're going to close GarageBand, not save. So pros, it's easy to use. The volume and dynamic level sliders are useful, as are the articulation choices and control over the reverb. I'm using the Discover version, which is free, so it comes with limited instruments and features. The core version gives you more control, mic positions, for instance, and then there's the professional version. If this is something that interests you, here's a link to the Spitfire Audio website that does BBC strings. Berlin Free Orchestra I've only had for about a week. It comes with a free sine player, or it works as a plug-in within your DAW, and it has quite a remarkable sampling of everything that the Berlin Philharmonic can play. So it's definitely worth spending some time on. All right, we're going to have a look at or listen to the Berlin Free Orchestra. I've gone ahead and loaded up a new screen in GarageBand, the DAW that I'm using. It defaults with classic electric piano as the startup sound every time. Yep. And we're not going to be using any of the Apple sounds today, so we'll just click this little toggle switch to hide the Apple sounds. Now, to change this sound and load a different instrument, we'll come down to the plugins, and beside ePiano, we'll click Sine Player, which is the player for Berlin Orchestra instruments. And there it goes, it loads it up. It's telling us it's in the classic electric piano track right now. We can rename that later. And it shows me that in my library I only have the Berlin Free Orchestra version. Click that, and it shows that I've got string choices, woodwind choices, and I'm going to play with the brass today. So if I want the brass ensemble, I'll double click on that. And over here in the loaded articulations panel, it shows me I've got the brass ensemble loaded, and my two choices are sustains or staccato. That's because it's the free version. If you pay more, you get more options. And over here are the key switches. So by clicking this one, I get the sustain sound. If I click this one, I get the staccato sound. The on-screen keyboard you can use with your mouse, but you'll note that the default when it loads it in is a volume of -2 decibels. So the very first thing I would like to do is I would like to crank that up so you can hear it better. And on my MIDI keyboard, I don't know if you can see over here, I am also turning the volume up over there. So here's what it sounds like with the mouse. Pretty darn good. And I can use my MIDI keyboard for much more agile playing. Wow, sounds great. When you are satisfied that you have the sound that you want, you can close this little panel. The sound is still loaded, and I'm just going to change the name right now before I forget. I'll double click on the name and put Berlin. No, I'm going to put Brass Ensemble Berlin Free. And then I know what sound I've got loaded into that track and where it came from. If I want to do more tracks that are other instruments within Sine Player, I can click Track, New Track with Duplicate Settings, and it will load the brass ensemble again. But now all I have to do is click on the Sine Player and tell it, this time I want to clear out the brass ensemble that I've got right now. I'll just click KS and go clear list, and then I'll go back in here and maybe I'll load my strings, a string ensemble for instance. And so that should now be playing or available for my second track. Lovely. That's a quick look at the Berlin Free Orchestra loaded into your DAW as a VST or audio unit. Okay, last of all we have Musio, and Musio can be played in their Musio player or as a plugin within your DAW. Unfortunately, it works on new Macs with the M series of chips, but it doesn't work on Macs with the Intel chip. So if you have a Mac with an Intel chip like I do, that's when you jump over to Reaper, which is just another DAW, and you can load your Musio into that. It has an amazing list of instruments that we'll look at in a second. This is just a little sample. And there are three things worth knowing about. If you are just going to use an instrument for a few minutes and you don't really want to download it to your computer, you just press the load button and it's a temporary load while you're using it. If you want to download it to you and save it on your computer, you would use the download icon, and there is a great hamburger menu for customizing your settings. So, prices. They have a monthly plan or a yearly plan or buy it once and you're done with it plan. So here's a link to their website. Let's have a look at the Musio player. And here it comes. Now all of these instrument packages are on their website. They're not saved on the computer right now. If I click instrument, I don't have any instruments loaded at the moment. Haven't downloaded anything today. And so I will have a look at the catalog. And if you click full catalog rather than just explore, you can see the amazing range of sound libraries. There are solo instruments, there are ensemble instruments, tons of percussion, interesting ethnic instruments, and it goes on and on. I'm going to go down to the Cinebrass Deep Horns right now, and you can see quite a few choices. And as I scroll by, some of them have a little triangle, and that means I can just have a quick listen to see what they sound like. Here's 3 tubas and 3 euphonium. Sounds good to me. Let's try the rips. Wow. And let's try the clusters and flutters. I'm sold. I want to start playing right now. The dog is not so sure. You might hear a couple of little ruffs and growls beside me. All right, if you just want to load them temporarily into your memory and have them gone as soon as you're done, you would just click the load button, and beside in gray it tells you the size of the file. If you want to actually download the sound and save it to your computer so you can work offline, there's a little download button for that. So I think right now we'll go for the sustains and click that. Oops, no, I don't want to download. I want to just load. And right away it appears over here in my side panel. I can control the volume, whether I'm soloing or muting, choose my MIDI channel and my volume. And down here on the screen, at the bottom of the screen, there is a keyboard, so you can use your mouse just to try a few notes out, but it's pretty hard to play that way. If you've got your MIDI keyboard plugged in and you've told Musio in the settings where to go, how to connect up with your MIDI keyboard, then I should be able to play it from here. Sounds pretty good. When you're done with it, with that sound, you can just click the little X to make it go away, or you can jump around to other libraries and grab other instruments and drag them over here and load them in here as well, so that you can have a multi-instrument effect played all at the same time. It's worth noting the hamburger menu as well, which allows you to configure your settings customized to you. That's a quick tour of Musio. So, on to mixing techniques. If you have the ability to multi-track right there in your DAW, which you do, and you want to build a richer ensemble sound, it's easy to make 2 or 3 separate recordings to combine in your DAW, and we're going to play with that in just a minute. Each take will be slightly different, just due to the humanizing factor. I suggest recording all of the instruments dry, no reverb or echo, and combining, because combining them can sound muddy if you do a different thing with each one. I like to make that decision at the end after I've got all of the instruments sorted. Do all your adjustments, panning, balancing volume, adjusting EQ, cutting out little bits that need to be cut out, and then create a master track and use that master track to control things like your spatializer or your hall designer and add special effects as needed. So if you have the ability to add live performers to any of your recordings, it's highly preferable to do that because it gives it an extra sense of realism. There can be mixing challenges if you're combining MIDI files and WAV files or files from different software, because whenever your score has tempo markings like RIT or RAL or POCO or MOLTO, each piece of software will interpret those differently, and then making them all match up at the end is a real pain, or can be a real pain. But if you have a score that's very straightforward and all the tempos are marked with actual numbers for tempo markings, it's much easier to manage. All right, so let's have a quick look at why that makes a difference. So a little while ago we watched a video with running water, streams and rivulets and all of those things, and this is that file in GarageBand, and you can see I've got a separate track for each instrument using the BBC Symphony Orchestra, but I didn't start with that. I started off with Garritan Orchestra by itself. And so what we're going to do is we're going to listen to Garritan Orchestra by itself first, and then we're going to add in the KONTAKT Orchestra, and then we're going to add in the BBC Orchestra, all playing at the same time to hear the difference. The other thing is I've got a master track, and in that master track I've got the space designer turned on, so I'm going to turn that off, and the stereo spread on, and I'm going to turn that off. So we're going to start off just with how Garritan played it and add in layers. I don't know how easy it will be for you to hear the differences on your speakers, but let's see if you can hear any differences. Here we go. So Garritan Orchestra is starting off by itself. Now I'm going to add in the KONTAKT. Now let's add in all the orchestra. let's go to the master track, and we're going to turn on the Space Designer, which allows us to drop the orchestra into any room. And all of a sudden we've got reverb, and we've got a sound of spaciousness around us. And last of all, I'm going to use the stereo spread, and this will probably be the most subtle one, but hearing the instruments spread out. Was that a lot of effort? Did it take a lot of time? Yes. But it's worth noting that whenever you're using a full orchestra, you can make a template. So you just have to set up all your tracks once for each individual instrument, and then save that with no audio in it yet, but just save the instrument setup as a template. And then the next time you need an orchestra, just load that template and you'll have all the instruments ready to go. All right, switching back to our presentation, and we're just about at the end here. So here's our summary. The Apple Instruments in GarageBand is free with every Mac, and the upgrade is $4.99. Well worth it. It has a good selection of orchestral instruments, but not all of them, and no option to adjust the articulations. If you're working in the pop, rock, jazz kind of field, all sorts of fun things are available to you. And it's a fully functioning DAW, so you don't need to spend any money on buying a DAW until you get so professional and expert that you need to move on to something with more features. KONTAKT factory library that comes with KONTAKT. It's about $300 Canadian. As I mentioned, I saw a sale this week, a summer sale for less than that. It has an amazing selection of orchestral instruments that I use all the time, and pop and rock instruments as well. And the bonus advantage with KONTAKT is that it acts as a player for many other sounds from third-party developers. So if you're interested in exploring the wider range of digitized and synthesized sounds, it's a good investment. And it works well within your DAW. I'm running version 6, which is very old. It's probably about 6 years old now. They're up to version 8. BBC Symphony Orchestra, easy to use. It has a variety of price points depending on how deep you get into it. Of course, the free one is the most limited. Berlin Free Orchestra is, as it says, free. Can be played in their sign player or within your DAW. It includes an excellent selection of well-sampled instruments, and they have various versions of it up to about $1,000, so you can buy in at the level that suits you. And Musio is the one that comes with a monthly plan or a yearly plan or a perpetual license. And again, this is the one that works on a Mac with an M1 chip, but not in GarageBand on the Intel chip Mac. So that's where you have to switch to another DAW. They have an extensive list of instruments, including lots of ethnic instruments and a good selection of percussion. So, if you're curious and you want to learn more, I would start with the manufacturer's website every time. YouTube how-to videos. There's a fellow named Guy Michael Moore, and he's worth getting to know if you haven't come across his videos. Social media and discussion groups. There are Facebook groups for every piece of software ever made, and there are other groups on things like Discord. Leonard has recently announced a new website called Groove 3, and it's full of educational resources, including how-to videos. And I am sharing my notes about software on my website. If you just put /my-notes, or if you look in the menu under My Software Notes, you'll find them. And today's presentation will be there with all the links. So here's an invitation to connect. If you're interested in pursuing any of these things, this is my email, and you're welcome to connect with me. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. Merci d'être avec nous aujourd'hui. And big thanks to Jana and Carlos at the Prairie Region branch of the CMC for hosting this series. And now it's time for questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Geoffrey.
You're welcome.
Just looking at the chat here, I don't think I saw any questions. I did see some suggestions from Donovan, just some other resources and tools that he's used, looks like. If anyone has any questions, you're welcome to unmute or pop them in the chat, and I can ask them directly to Geoffrey. Geoffrey, do you primarily work in GarageBand, or do you find yourself having to switch to a different DAW, and if GarageBand doesn't quite have a capability that you're looking for?
I'm always using GarageBand. So far, it hasn't stumped me on anything. When I get stuck and I don't know what to do, I go to a YouTube video and I put in, how do I do this in GarageBand? And somebody's made a video that shows me how. So yeah, I have not had the need to upgrade yet. But I'm just at that tipping point where I'm writing music for orchestra, but just getting into that. And if I was, say, a professional composer who wrote movie scores, I would definitely move up to the next level. One of the things, for instance, that Logic can do is, rather than having to look at a separate track for every string instrument, you can group them together and collapse that into a group just called strings, which you can open up again anytime you need to work on them. But once you're done with the strings, by being able to collapse them down, it's taking up less space on your screen, and you can collapse the brass and collapse the percussion. So it's just sensible for workflow. But yeah, GarageBand has really been able to do all the things that I need. And as I say, in the Windows world, Reaper is supposed to be a very comparable product, although I'm not experienced with that. All right, well, thank you very much for this opportunity to present, and I hope that people are able to try something new.
Just got one question here from Donovan. He's used Mirror Pro for spatialization of his audio instruments.
Mm-hmm.
Hasn't used them in the more recent Mirror 3D. He's asking if you have ever delved into that.
Not that particular one. I'm a creature of habit, so once I find something that I like, I tend to stick with it. But one of the things that is wonderful about plugins is the flexibility. And so when I go into something like the reverb plugins or the spatializer plugins, they give you an infinite variety of choices with sliders or dials, so you can dial in exactly the amount of reverb and slapback and echo and all of those things that you want, customize it to suit your needs, and then you can save that, so that I've got my own settings for a small chamber choir as opposed to a large philharmonic choir, as opposed to a small chamber instrumental group or a full symphony orchestra. And you can just sort of choose the room that you want them to be singing in. And so yeah, it's taken care of all of my needs.
Yeah, you mentioned that In addition to using Musio and KONTAKT, he also uses East-West Composer Cloud, which is a sample library as well for.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, and East West is one of those products that has an exceptional track record, and many professional film composers use that. Again, you're talking thousands of dollars for for the full featured version. But yeah, there are so many different programs out there vying for our attention.
Mhm.
So the ones that are presented today are the ones that I am getting to know or have used for a while, but there is a lot out there to explore. So I would encourage anybody to start with a trial version or a free version and really run it through its paces. Uh, try before you buy kind of philosophy.
I'm curious. Just one more question for me. I've used some plugins from Spitfire Audio
Yes.
um, in my time. I'm curious as to all of the plugins that you're running from the different libraries. I guess. Are you
Yeah.
finding that it's taking up a lot of storage, like memory on the computer?
Oh, it can, and it can eat into your budget like crazy too, because I get all these sale advertisements sent to me in my email. Oh, this one's on special for $29 US or $19 US or whatever it is. And it's easy to get excited and buy a lot of plugins that you never use. So I have to behave myself and think about what do I need for this piece of music, and not go and buy a bunch of things that I think I might use someday, but to uh, really keep it simple. And uh, yeah, if there's a plugin that you really will use for a particular project, fine. But yeah, I would discourage a composer from just buying lots and lots and lots of plugins and mashing it all together, because keeping it simple, keeping the sound clean, uh, will help make your product sound more professional.
Mhm. We've got one question from Aura. She's asking what just to confirm what you used for the vocal samples with lyrics.
Oh yeah, and I encourage you to go to the CMC's new YouTube um, site. Now, if you go to I don't know, do you have that posted, Carlos, on the CMC website?
It is on the site. I also did
Okay.
post it in the chat, the previous video.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah, it's worth going, and then you can really get a strong sense of the uh, pros and cons of each piece of software. But the three things that I use is one called Cantamus, Cantamus, and that's actually a website, cantamus.app, and it's based out of Spain, and you drag and drop your score in not compressed but fully expanded music XML format, and it assigns one singer to each part. So if you've got an SATB piece, you'll have four singers, one on each part. Uh, and it costs €5 a month to subscribe, so about $7.50 Canadian. And I use that often for my choral music. And it's quite expressive. And the second one that I use is called Dream Tonics Synthesizer V Pro with Dream Tonics voices. And that is great for jazz and pop style music where you scoop into the notes and you drop off at the end of the notes, and very powerful singers. And both of those pieces of software sing in a variety of languages, not just English. And then there's a brand new one that is not officially released yet, that I've been doing a bit of work with the beta version of it, and it's called KANTAI, CANTAI. And again, it's a web-based product where you drag your MIDI file or your music XML file and drop it into the loading area. And then you have a choice of solo singers or choral voices. It's not really ready to be released to the public yet, but you can sample it. You can buy a license for it, knowing that it's not a finished product yet. And I've had a lot of fun with that and got some pretty good results. I've got a piece that I've just finished that I'm dying to share with the world, but it's been entered into a contest where it has to remain anonymous until the judges judge it. So I'm sitting on my hands, bouncing up and down, waiting to be able to share that. And I did the recording with a combination of Cantamus and KANTAI voices, and I'm quite pleased with the results.